During this program, we try to convince the bears to come down. When they're out in the 2.5-acre enclosure, it's really up to them whether they want to do whatever they want to do. We don't force the bears to do anything here at the center. And if they decide they don't want to come down, well, that's just a bear being a bear. And there's not really a whole lot we can do about it. We wouldn't want to physically force the bears to do anything they don't want to do here at the center, nor could we if we wanted to. Our smallest bear is over 300 pounds. I'm about 170 soaking wet. So we couldn't physically force them again, even if we wanted to. Now, usually when we get on the mic, the bears, since they've been here for a while, know the programs here. And they know to them, the person talking on the mic means a tour or some type of program. And to the bears, a program means treats. So they are a little bit more inclined to come around when they hear us. And I know the bears can hear us, even though it's windy and there's the noise from the waterfalls. Bears have an incredible sensitivity in hearing. They can hear both above and below the frequencies humans can pick up. So I know they know I'm down here, and I know they know I have food for them. It's just whether or not they actually want to show up for it. Currently, we do have both females out in the main enclosure. They're our two smallest bears. The females are roughly about half the size of the males when they're full grown. Both of our females are smaller than our males. They're very similar in size and age. One is 7 and one is 9, and they're both hanging in around that 350 mark right now in terms of weight. Not all the bears get along, so we can't let all of them out together, which is why we rotate bears in and out of the private enclosures into the main enclosure. Now, a day like today actually isn't too bad of a day to be a bear. If you're out down front, it's not very sunny out, so they do stay cooler on these days. But it is humid, which they're not big fans of, but that doesn't mean they won't show up. Now we're entering the time of year where we call hyperphagia for the bears. That just basically means they're a little extra hungry than usual. Basically, black bears are perpetually hungry, or they're always hungry. But towards the end of the summer, early fall, they get extra hungry. This is the last little bit of time they have to add to that fat layer. During their winter dormancy, they will not eat any food. They survive solely off the fat layer that they've built up over the course of the previous spring, summer, and fall. And if you're a female bear, you give birth to your new cubs in the winter den. So not only do you need to rely on that fat layer for your own health, but you need to make milk with it to feed your young. Baby bears are typically born in January in this area. When they are born, they're very small. They're roughly the size of a stick of butter. That's kind of unique for an animal that gets as big as the black bear. Most of the other animals that get similar size in our world, they typically are born ready to go. They're furred, they can see, they can hear, and they can stand just about immediately upon being born. The black bears are unique in that area, or bears in general, in that they are large animals, but when they're born, they are very small. They also are deaf, blind, and virtually hairless, so they're pretty much helpless. But by the time the females exit the den in that springtime, the bears are usually about 4 to 5 months old, and one of the first things they do when they get out is they start climbing trees. It's one of their most important features or activities that they can do out in the wild. It helps them get food, and it helps them escape danger. Now, here in northern Minnesota, there's not a whole lot of natural predators of the black bear left. You could say wolves are predators. It's very rare for a wolf to prey on an adult black bear. It's even rare for them to prey on young black bears, but it can and will happen. It's been recorded before. It's just not necessarily common. Other than the wolves, we don't really have any predators for them here besides humans. In fact, the two top causes of mortality here in Minnesota are both human-related, hunting and car accidents. So here in Minnesota, we do have a regulated hunting season. Because of that, we are able to hunt bears here in Minnesota. On average, we harvest about 3,000 bears per year. That's a pretty good harvest number, and if we can afford to do that, that means we have a pretty good population statewide if we can take 3,000 every year. It's estimated that the black bear population in Minnesota is somewhere between 12,000 and 15,000 bears, and they are mostly restricted to the northern half or the northern third of the state. I did see the staff go and make a little lap to go see if they can wrangle the bears. So Sid and Ben, two of our awesome summer interns, are heading out around the 2.5-acre enclosure, and they're going to try to wrangle bears. I know that sounds really cool and fun, but it's not necessarily probably what you think. All we do is we make a perimeter check. We walk around the outside, and we call for the bears. They know that we're carrying around treat pouches and treats in our pockets. We keep some of their more favorite treats in our pockets. And then when we find them, we'll give them a little reward for coming to the fence, and we'll walk them from the outside of the fence down to the main area, rewarding them every 10 steps so they know they're going to get that reward. And once they make it down here, we have filled a few different food items out in the viewing area. So one of those trolley trees You can see both those two dead cedar trees in the main viewing area. They do have little trays and wires attached to them. We can put in those and wheel them over to the tree, and the bears sometimes climb up to get it. It's a form of enrichment as well. And then there's a big black tube hanging down from the deck on the far left side of it, and we fill that up as well, and the bears will jump up on the rock and start to get all the food out. So that's another type of enrichment. Then I have 2 enrichment toys down by me, so when the bears show up, or if they show up, I will toss them out there for them. They're just basically PVC tubes we painted to look like birch or aspen logs, and we drilled some holes in them. You fill a little bit of food in there, and the bears manipulate the object and get the food out. That causes some mental stimulation, or basically causes them to think, that's helpful for the bears, and we want to maintain that health. And that's actually the reason we do this enrichment. In captivity, bears do not have the same challenges they do in the wild. In the wild, they are constantly thinking about food, shelter, danger, and taking care of those young if you're a female. Constantly being stimulated. In captivity, a lot of those challenges are taken away from them. They don't have to worry about predators. They don't have to worry about competing for food. They don't have to worry about offspring, because we don't breed the bears here. So a lot of that mental stimulation isn't going to happen here in captivity. So we have to mimic it or create opportunities for the bears to get that. We do that by enrichment. I'm going to take a brief pause, and I'm just going to check in to see if they have found any of the bears. So far, there has been no sign of the bears. Again, they do have a 2.5 acre enclosure. If the bears don't want to be seen by people, it is pretty easy for them to just hang out in the middle. You can see the enclosure is very well foliated. There's lots of trees, bush, shrubs, and small plants. And the bears not only love eating those plants, but they love hiding in them as well. Even for our biggest bear, Ted, you'd be surprised, and he goes into hibernation, he's about 700 pounds. You'd be surprised how easy it is for him to hide in the main enclosure. You'd think a 700-pound bear, as large as Ted, would be easy to spot no matter where they are in the enclosure. But you'd be wrong. We've had plenty of times where Ted lays down behind a bush and you can't find him for a while. And the 2 females are smaller than Ted, so it's even easier for them to hide. Black bears are rather elusive animals. This time of year, they are most likely crepuscular. That means they're active during certain parts of the evening and the morning. We call an animal that's active during the nighttime, that's called nocturnal. An animal that's active during the daytime is called diurnal. But if you're active in the morning time and the evening time, but not the middle of the night or the middle of the day, we call that crepuscular. And that's what the bears are right now. Now, in the middle of summer, they'll probably be more nocturnal. They adjust. They are black, so being out in the middle of sun on a hot, sunny day can be kind of hard on them. They actually can overheat quite easily. We reported the tips of their hairs in direct sunlight of getting in excess of 185 degrees. So they can get really hot really easily, and they can't sweat like we can. So they have to cool down with water. All right, so that's why the pond is a very important feature of our enclosure. It allows the bears to keep cool even on the hottest of summer days. Now, thankfully, we don't have too hot of summers up here, and this one has actually been remarkably cool, even for us. So the bears have had a really easy time getting through this year. We haven't seen a whole lot of swimming because, again, they were able to stay cool with just the cool summer that we've had. We do often get other animals that come and go in the enclosure. So even if you're about a woodchuck size or smaller, you can come and go freely into the enclosure and out of it because you can fit through the fence. So actually the large rock den, it is used by one of the bears typically in the wintertime as a den for being dormant through the winter. But through the whole summer, it's actually used by a woodchuck. And believe it or not, the bears are actually scared of the woodchuck. We'll throw food into that cave, and any of our bears will go crawling on in there to get the food out. And sometimes we'll see them come running out of there and a little woodchuck nipping at their heels. So again, ours are well fed. They're well cared for. They're all a bit on the chunky side of things. When bears are well fed, black bears specifically, meat sources for food aren't typically preferred. It's pretty low on their preferred foods list. In fact, only 10% of their diet in the wild is actually made up of other animals, and the biggest chunk of that 10% is actually insects. All right, so I'm sure most of you know who Winnie the Pooh is, and I hate to be the one to tell you this, but they're actually kind of a liar. They're really the only bear that likes honey. What bears are looking for when they go into a hive like that is they're actually looking for the larvae stage or the baby bees. They are not so interested in the honey. In fact, this far north, we don't have native colony nesting honeybees. We do have hornets, though, and you will find that they make a big paper mache looking nest in a tree. Sometimes they can be bigger than a basketball in size. Now, the bald-faced we have up here, they're twice the size of a honeybee, and they can sting you repeatedly without dying, whereas a honeybee stings you and it typically dies. And again, hornets do not make honey, but we regularly see not only our captive bears here at the center, but even the wild bears out in the woods around the greater Ely area regularly raid these nests. And again, there is no honey to promote them to going in there. So again, they're after that larvae stage of those hornets as well. Now, will a bear eat honey if given the opportunity? Sure. A black bear will eat just about anything if it's hungry enough. That's why you've probably seen pictures or heard stories of them tipping over trash cans, going for bird feeders or grills, breaking into cabins and coolers and stuff like that. A hungry black bear will eat just about anything, and they can eat just about anything. But again, our bears here at the center are well fed. So again, meat and honey are very low on their preferred foods list. We actually did a taste test with wild bears once upon a time to see how much they like honey. We went and got a muffin tin, and we filled each row of the muffin tin up with a different food item. There was a berry, pecans, and then honey. The first wild bear came up. It ate the pecans and the berries. It sniffed the honey, and it walked away. Didn't want anything to do with it. Second bear ate the berries first, and then it ate the pecans. While it was eating the pecans, it did drop one into one of the tins of honey. After it finished the pecans, it tried to use its claws to get the pecan out. Now, honey's really sticky, and it had a fairly difficult time getting it out of the honey. And after about a minute or two of trying to get it out, it smashed the muffin tin, threw it in the woods, and took off. It was very frustrated. The third bear did come up, and it did eat all three food items, but it ate the honey last. So out of three bears, only one bear actually ate the honey, and it ate it last, which again would just moreover prove that a hungry bear will eat anything. But again, honey and meat typically aren't things they're actually looking for out in the wild. So that brings me to these squirrels and chipmunks. A lot of people ask us, well, why don't the bears eat them? Our bears are well fed. And so the chipmunks are not really a menu item. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to chase down a chipmunk, but it's not the easiest task. They're very quick. And bears can be quick as well. They say the leanest of bears can run about 30 to 35 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. I can say with absolute confidence, none of our 5 miles per hour. Again, they're a bit on the chunky side here. So ours are not quite that quick. But even if they were, chasing down a chipmunk is very difficult for a black bear. They're not very well adapted for chasing down prey. They're good at maybe sneaking up and surprising it, but actually chasing it down is tough for them. So those little chipmunks, when they run around, they don't really run in a straight line. They dart all over the place. Black bears actually have a really hard time making sharp turns at their top speed. Their front legs are significantly shorter than their back. So when they make those turns at high speeds, they oftentimes just fall over. All right, so chasing down other animals can be really tough for them. Now, let's say they caught one of those chipmunks. You take away the bones and the fur because there's not a lot of nutrition there. The actual amount of food that's in a chipmunk is really, really small. It's not going to give them more than a half a mouthful of food when they eat it. All right, that's probably not going to give them the energy back they just expend while they chase the chipmunk. All that being said, we have had a few chipmunk and squirrel fatalities over the years here. What will happen is we'll give a big pile of peanuts to one of the bears, and one of those chipmunks and squirrels will decide to steal from the pile. Although they don't like to eat the chipmunks, they do not appreciate being stolen from. So when those chipmunks steal, one of the bears may reach out and squish them, much like you or I would squish a mosquito. It's bear versus chipmunk. That's not really a fair fight. And then we'll get left with a dead pancake chipmunk. Now, again, I've worked here for almost 5 years now. I've never seen one of the bears actually eat the chipmunk. They just take the peanut back that it stole. So it's a food defense behavior. They're not interested in actually consuming it, and that means the staff has to go take a dead chipmunk and throw it out in the woods somewhere for an animal that will actually come to eat it because, again, our bears won't. But if you think about it, it probably helps those chipmunks and squirrels in the long run. Presumably, the slower and dumber chipmunks are the ones that get squished, and that means the smarter, faster ones live on to reproduce, creating more smart and fast chipmunks. That's called survival of the fittest, or Darwinism. So we're creating lots of smart and fast chipmunks here at the Bear Center, which inevitably will help the population to have more smart and fast ones rather than the slow and dumb ones.
There is one behind the fence over there. You see it from up above.
Holly, Tasha! Did you see any bears?
Head's enclosure right now, but no, I don't see either of them.
Copy. Can you tell if Lucky's at the back of his fence?
He is at the front of his fence.
Can you see any bears on the mound? Just from where you are. You don't have to move to see it. I'm just curious.
That's a negative.
Copy, Ghost Rider. Alrighty, well, I just checked in with the staff again. It doesn't look like we've been able to get the bears down front. So Tasha and Holly, both the females that are out in the main enclosure currently, are somewhere in the middle, and it doesn't appear they will be coming down. So I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap up the broadcast. We will be taking out another behind-the-scenes tour so you can see the bears at the top of the hour, which would be the next tour at 1 o'clock, and that is in about 15 minutes. We'll meet at those large viewing windows down front, and we'll do a brief intro and take you outside to see the bears up close. And then that program, we do guarantee you will see the bears, unlike this broadcast program where it's up to them to come down. So I also just want to thank those of you here at the center today. You all had to pay an admission price to be here today. We're very appreciative of that, especially as a nonprofit. But I'll also remind everybody here that we are broadcasting this online. So for those of you that traveled far to come to the Bear Center today or for your vacation here in Ely, Minnesota, and you do want to check up on the bears when you leave, you don't necessarily have to come to the center to see them. We do have live cameras posted all around the enclosure. In fact, every day at 12:30, we do a live broadcast right down front, and there are usually bears for it. Today there isn't, I realize that, but usually there are. And you can check out those cameras and those programs all for free from the comfort of your own home as long as you have internet. You can go to our website, bear.org. You can choose from a variety of cams. Between the 5 or 6 cams that we have, you can almost always find a bear on one. So I'll encourage you to check those things out. And I just want to thank those of you who are tuning in today on the broadcast. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry I couldn't get some bears down for you, but thanks for supporting us from far and away. A lot of those cam watchers are from across the country and sometimes even across the world. So as long as you have internet, you can usually see what the bears are up to here at the center. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming out today, whether you're here in person or you're tuning in online. We appreciate that support. Again, the next program will leave from the viewing window area in about 15 minutes. We'll make a couple announcements beforehand so you won't miss it if you're browsing inside. And that about does it for our 12:30 Bear broadcast enrichment. Thanks again, everybody, for coming out, and we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.